Story time about how my boyfriend gave me sleeping pills before his boys' night out. I had been dating my boyfriend for a year and we always had a pretty trusting relationship. One weekend, he was going to have a boys' night out with his friends and I was going to stay home. However, earlier in the day, we had gone into an argument about how he never checks his phone while he's out or replies to my text to check in. He said he shouldn't have to check in with me while he's out and I disagreed because I just want to make sure that he's okay. Fast forward to later that night when he's getting ready, I told him that even though we're fighting, I still expect him to keep in touch with me. He agrees this time without putting up a fight and asks me if I want to have a drink with him before he goes. He makes us some cocktails and we drink them together while we wait for his friends to come pick him up. When his friends get there, he kisses me goodbye and leaves. Not even half an hour later, I'm knocked out cold. I remember waking up once just for a second to use the bathroom, but then knocking out again. In the morning when I woke up, he was asleep next to me and I was really confused as to why I slept so much when I wasn't even tired. When my boyfriend woke up, he mentioned how nice it was that I hadn't messaged him and how I must have slept through the night after those cocktails. This raised some red flags and I quickly questioned him about what was in the cocktails. At first, he called me crazy and told me that he didn't do anything to them. However, after about 20 minutes of accusing him, he finally confessed.
My mother-in-law has hated me since day one because I grew up in a single-family household, and she told my husband that he deserved to be with someone who came from a two-parent household. For 4 years, I bit my tongue trying to get her to like me. When we got engaged, she tried to dictate my whole wedding, not offering to pay for anything. When I decided I didn't want kids at the wedding, she flipped and told me I was selfish, that the wedding isn't for me, that I'm tearing her family apart, and that I'm ruining her life. Day of the wedding, she causes a scene because my mom danced with me and my husband, stealing her spotlight. My husband and her get into a fight, he storms away, and then she pushes me. I push her off, and then she lunges at me, going for my throat. She's literally trying to choke me at my wedding. All because I try to grab my husband and say that this was not the time for a fight with his mom. She gets escorted out by security. Fast forward to now. She tries to communicate with my husband, and my husband ignores her. Now he wants her back in his life. I don't know what to do. This lady put her hands on me at our wedding. I tried explaining to my husband how much she's hurt me, and he says he understands, but that's his mom. I don't know if I should let my husband talk to her again because I don't want him to resent me, but she crossed so many boundaries and she doesn't see what she did wrong. And she refuses to apologize to me.
Story time of how I made my high school bully's dad my sugar daddy. Freshman year wasn't the best time for me. I wasn't the most popular or best looking girl at school. I was really shy and instead of trying to make friends and talk to people, I kept to myself. Most people let me do my own thing, but then there was a girl named Claire. I don't know what I ever did to this girl, but she made my life miserable every chance she got. Making fun of my looks and putting me down in front of others was almost a daily ritual for Claire. My mom didn't have a lot of money, so I couldn't afford the cool clothing brands and styles that were in. Claire would call me out for being poor and say I got all my clothes from Goodwill, all while laughing. One day at lunch, she smacked the tray out of my hands as I was passing by and food got all over me. This resulted in the whole cafeteria staring and laughing at me. Fast forward to the end of senior year and I had a major glow up. I was more confident, people started noticing me, and I had a lot of friends. I figured it was time to start dating, but I didn't really like anyone at school, so I downloaded a dating app. I matched with a handsome older guy who was looking for a sugar baby. I looked him up on Instagram to see more pictures and saw Claire in one of his photos. Upon further inspection, I discovered that this man was her recently divorced dad. I immediately messaged him. Part 2 of how I made my high school bully's dad my sugar daddy. I began chatting back and forth with Claire's dad through the dating app. He was twice my age, but he was handsome, and given the circumstances, I had to give this my best shot. He told me he was looking for a beautiful girl to spoil and spend time with, and made it very clear that he was interested in me. After talking for a few weeks, we set up our first date, which was dinner at a nice restaurant, followed by shopping. I knew this man had money because I remember Claire being one of the rich girls at school, and I was right. He took me to the Louis store and let me pick out any bag I wanted. We kept talking and it was working out really nicely for me. He would send me money every week for makeup, to get my nails and hair done, or for whatever else I needed in between dates. One week he said he couldn't go on our usual Saturday night outing because his daughter was coming over for dinner. I was not going to waste this opportunity. I told him how much I was looking forward to seeing him and asked if I could join them. He was hesitant at first, but I eventually talked him into it. I'll never forget the look on Claire's face when I walked in and kissed her dad. I showed Claire the new purse that her dad had bought me and bragged about how well he's always treating me. She was fuming and stormed out shortly after. To this day, he's still my sugar daddy and Claire hates everything about it.
My best friend is getting married. Neither of us have any sisters, so we're both the closest the other has to one. Her fiance comes from an extremely mega Catholic family. She pulled me aside this past weekend and told me I wouldn't be able to go to the ceremony, which is in a traditional Catholic church. Her fiance's parents, who are paying for almost all of the wedding, do not want anyone who is not baptized, no one with kids out of wedlock, and no unmarried couples who are living together. I have 2 children from 2 different people, and I didn't marry either of their fathers. She said a lot of people are being uninvited to the ceremony, but I'm still welcome to come to the reception. That's just their demands for footing the bill for everything. I was fucking pissed. I'm used to being judged for being a young unmarried mom, but not by a person I trusted. I told her I won't be going to the wedding at all. Reception be damned. She started crying and said it wasn't her choice, but she couldn't change their minds. I told her she's a hypocrite because she's already slept with her fiancé, and if she really is choosing money for a single date over me and my kids who she claims she loves. She pretty much begged me to reconsider, but I told her I respected myself and my children too much for that. I know it was a hard choice for her to make, but I feel like shit being judged for my kids and my past choices. Am I the asshole for telling her I won't come to her wedding?
Storytime about my scariest experience being home alone. When I was 14, I lived with my grandparents. They lived in an old bungalow type of house. It was one story and we had stairs that went right up to the attic. No one ever used the attic and it was just used to store things. My room door was near the stairs leading up to the attic, which I hated because I always got scared something would crawl down when I left my room. One night, my grandparents had to pick up my aunt's family from the airport. They wouldn't be back until early morning. I told them that I'd be safe at home overnight. We lived in a gated community with guard dogs and I thought everything would be okay. Before they left, we had an early dinner and I was stuck doing the dishes. While I was doing this, I could hear the neighboring dogs barking a lot, but I didn't think much of it because they always did that. After cleaning, I locked every window, shut off the lights, and headed to bed. When I entered my room, the lights were on and everything looked completely normal. I had barred and tinted windows because my grandparents didn't want anyone peeping in my room since it was a one-story house. They were barred because when my uncle was younger, he'd always sneak out, so they put bars on the window to prevent him from doing that. When I turned off the lights to go to bed, I saw a silhouette of a man illuminated by the streetlights standing outside of my window. I thought I was hallucinating. When I turned on the lights, he was gone. When I turned them off, he was there. Part 2 of my scariest experience when I was home alone. When I turned the lights on and off the third time, the man's figure wasn't there either time. I sighed in relief and thought my mind was just playing tricks on me or that something was casting a shadow. I double locked my door to be safe with one on the doorknob and one of those latch-type locks. I tucked myself in bed and tried to fall asleep even though the dogs were still barking outside. When I was finally falling asleep, I heard something above me moving, something in the attic. I pushed the thought down and hugged my pillow, telling myself it was just rats. My heart sank when I heard someone hurriedly go down the stairs and stop at the bottom. I covered myself with a blanket and waited, wishing my grandparents had given me a phone for a time like this. Suddenly, I heard my doorknob being gently fiddled. I wanted to vomit when I heard a click followed by a quiet turn of the knob. It turned, but it didn't budge. When they noticed, they tried to push it. I finally stood up and softly pushed my body against the door, locking everything up again. I didn't want to make a sound. I don't know why they stopped, but they did. Then I heard footsteps go up the stairs as I sat there. I saw something move in the corner of my eye, and there outside of my window was the shadow. I forced my eyes closed and ignored it until I fell asleep. All I remember is the next day I was having breakfast with my family. I brought it up to my grandparents, but they scoffed that it was probably rats. I never brought it up again, but the attic window had been open.
If a website ever asks you these questions, don't do what she did. Once there was a girl named Masha who heard that there's a new service that gives everyone free internet access, so she decided to use it, but this would lead to something horrifying for Masha and her family. After she connected to this internet service, a web page popped up asking her to register some information, but the questions were oddly personal. It asked, what's your usual mode of transportation? With a photo of a bus, a boat, a train, and a plane. Masha took her bike to school every day, so she clicked on the train instead. But the next day, the local news showed that there was a horrific train crash that killed everyone on board. Masha thought that this was a coincidence, but soon she'd realized that she made a deadly mistake. Later, she needed to use the internet again, so she logged back in. This time it asked, what kind of home do you live in? Along with 4 different pictures of different types of homes. She clicked apartment even though her and her family lived in a house. And the next day, the apartment building near her school burned down. The police suspected arson. Then she went back to the internet server one last time, but this time it showed a photo of her mother, father, sister, and herself with the question, who is your favorite family?
Today at work, I was trying to call my wife, but for some reason, my phone calls weren't getting through to her. So I used one of my coworkers' phones to dial my house number and call home. So I call home, and a sweet voice answers the phone. It's my daughter. I go, hey, cutie, how you doing? She goes, hey, daddy, what's up? And I go, I'm just at work. What are you and mommy doing? She says, well, I just finished lunch, and mommy's upstairs. I go, cutie, what's mommy doing upstairs? She goes, she's with Uncle Paul. And I go, Uncle Paul? We don't have an Uncle Paul. What do you mean? She's like, yeah, she's with Uncle Paul. They're upstairs in their room. So I'm like, cutie, that doesn't sound right. So what I want you to do is I want you to leave the phone on the kitchen table, go upstairs to your mommy's room and say, hey, daddy just pulled in the driveway, and tell me what happens, all right? She did it, and like a minute later, she comes back and picks up the phone and goes, okay, daddy, I did it. And I go, okay, what happened? She goes, well, mommy came running out of her room naked, and she tripped down the stairs and bumped her head, and now she can't get up. So I was like, what about the other guy? And she goes, well, Uncle Paul tried to jump out of the window into the pool, but he missed and hit the floor. Now he won't wake up. So I was like, we don't have a pool. Then I look at the phone number and I was like, oh, sorry, wrong number.
When my daughter was born, she had dark skin and looked like her parents could be of African descent. My husband was furious and accused me of cheating and left right then and there. He told everyone on both sides of the family what happened and wanted a divorce. Then his friends and families all called me to say how upset they were and called me really nasty names. My mother was by my side the entire time as I kept professing my innocence. He refused to pick me up from the hospital, threw myself out on the lawn, and changed the locks. When my sister called to get the baby stuff, he texted her a picture of a bare nursery room and said he got rid of everything. He even destroyed my art studio. Eventually, he agreed to do a paternity test, and he was 100% the father. No one could believe this, so he did it again, and he was the dad. One of his cousins did the ancestry thing and found out there was 30% of African in their family. This made Jim's paternal great-grandmother admit to having an affair around the same time Jim's grandfather was born, and because he could pass as hers, she just assumed her husband was the father. Since then, he's been reaching out and everyone has come to apologize. I told him I needed time and he asked to see the baby and I let him, but I'm too afraid to physically hand her to him. I've never cheated and have been 100% innocent all this time. Am I the asshole for not wanting to give him a second chance?
I just found out that my daughter is engaged and getting married to a man who is 20 years older than her. She's 19 and he's almost 40. Apparently, she's been seeing this man for the last 6 months and recently announced their engagement. I am in disbelief. What makes it worse is that she had confided in my sister, her aunt, about this when she first started seeing this guy. My sister encouraged her to do what makes her happy and basically pushed her into this relationship. Now she swears up and down that he's the love of her life and they're meant to be. She just told me about the relationship 2 weeks ago because she said she knew her father and I wouldn't be okay with it and was afraid of my reaction. She wanted me to meet her future husband before she introduced him to the rest of the family, so she invited me to brunch with them. When I arrived, I could instantly tell that this man knew what he was doing. I can't fathom what a 19-year-old and a 40-year-old have in common. I know this man is well off from the way he spoke about work. I could feel my teeth grate every time he put his hand on my daughter's lap, and it made me extremely uncomfortable to see them affectionate towards each other. Throughout the entire brunch, I was biting my tongue. However, when he mentioned that he wanted to purchase a house in another state for them to start a family soon after the wedding, I lost it. Things got extremely heated from here. Part 2. My daughter is engaged to a man 20 years older than her. My daughter is 19 and engaged to a 40-year-old who she's been dating for 6 months. At brunch, he mentioned that he was going to move them to another state and start a family soon after the wedding. This was my breaking point. This man already has been married 3 times and has a few children from those marriages. He's also closer to my age than her age, and his children are closer to her age. My daughter could tell that I was about to burst because she quickly tried to change the subject. However, I slammed my hand on the table and expressed how inappropriate this relationship is. I called this man out for basically grooming my daughter. My daughter quickly came to his defense, saying that age is just a number and that she's a consenting adult. I told her that I would never approve of this and left. My husband and I are furious about the situation and have tried telling our daughter that this is wrong. However, every time we try to talk to her about this, she blows up on us. She's made it clear that we can't talk her out of it and I'm at a loss. Now she's invited the rest of the family to dinner to meet her future husband. Everyone has been messaging me about it nonstop. Some are shocked about the age difference and others, like my sister, are telling me that I should stop trying to stand in the way of love. I want to shake my daughter into reality, but I feel that every time I mention my disapproval, it pushes her further towards him. Am I wrong and should I